Ms. Legalista, aka Attorney Sheila here. We're into the holidays now. Whatever you're celebrating, happy holidays to you. In the past, I've done Vlogmas on my vlog channel, but it's been a number of years since I've done that. And so I'm doing a call in today. You can call and ask questions related to business law, related to contracts, kicking your business off, getting it started, questions you may have. Actually, I have a list of topics I'm going to be talking about too. Some things that I think sometimes people could use a little bit more information about before they sort of jump out there. Some tidbits for anybody who's looking at maybe starting a business in the new year, which is why I'm talking about this now. I'm actually going to be doing a lot of these call-in sessions, lives where people can chat with me about starting their business in the new year. Since I know a lot of people are wrapping things up, they're looking at, hey, what didn't go right this year? What went well that I want to improve on? Do I just want to throw everything out the window and, I don't know, do something entirely different? People are really assessing that when they get to the end of the year. But I have a few things. I've put the link in the comment section for anybody who wants to come on board and ask some questions. And here's the thing, it's been a long time since I've actually done a live where I had somebody up here. So we'll hope that I get that right today. So one of the first things that I want to start off talking about before I jump into some of these red flags, I'm going to be throwing these red flags in here because I got some stories for you with some of the issues that I've run into when I've been working with people, representing people who are starting businesses, particularly around funding and how they can get money and what I've had to tell them not to do because I value them as people outside of jail and I would like to see them stay outside of jail. The first thing I want to talk about, though, is what do you need to know when you're looking at what your business name is? Now, I've had people come in with these really long names, something that's similar to some brand that's out there. And we have to start back from the very beginning here because some of these names are not going to work. You just cannot say you're going to take Nike and throw it in there with some name that you made up and stick it on the end, and that's what you're going to do. You really have to watch out for infringing on other people's names, other people's intellectual property. Because what I see people say, they will do things and say, hey, well, but that's not really owned by me, or this music isn't my music. And still they use it as if it belongs to them, and it doesn't. So let's talk a little bit about some of these names, some things to think about. One of the first things I'll tell people when they come to me and say, hey, I've got a name for my business. And I'm like, well, did you research it? Have you checked it out? Or did you just come up with it? A lot of times they have done a little bit of research. They'll say, well, I Googled it. Well, here are some things to think about. One of the first things you might want to do is go to the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. USPTO is where you want to go. Okay. Yesterday it was down because I think they were revamping the site, and you want to do a search. You want to make sure that nobody has already trademarked that. They've already registered that name with the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office. So you need to look at that at the federal level because that's where people are going to go. Then you also want to say, hey, maybe somebody in my state might be using it. Now, in a lot of states, you can go to their corporations department, or here in North Carolina, it's the Secretary of State, and you can look up trademarks to see if somebody has registered a trademark. Look at me, I'm getting all tongue-tied this morning. I think I've finished off my hot chocolate. You want to go look these things up. Another thing I tell people is to just Google it. Google it and see what's going on. Check social media. Now, this came up for me just this morning because I had this cute little hashtag I wanted to use. I was going to come up with some sort of legal theme around Christmas, and I was going to put hashtag something in there and tell everybody to hashtag that. And then I went and looked, and somebody had already registered that thing, and they were using it on Instagram. And here I thought I was being original. So what I'm trying to tell you is the stuff that you're coming up with, a lot of times you are not as original as you think you are. You think you're really smart, and I came up with some really great name, and I'm here to tell you that is not always the case. So check that name out. Go on to social media. the different platforms, at least the top tier social media accounts, okay? Check Facebook, check Instagram, check TikTok, check YouTube, and then start working your way down. Check Pinterest, check Twitter, and keep going, because there are a lot of social media platforms out there now. I'm not expecting you to check them all, but you should at least check the top tier ones to make sure that this name isn't already being used. And then the other thing is, hey, did you even check to see if the domain was taken? Again, I'm telling you, people come to me and everybody thinks that they have the most original idea in the world and that their name is original. And most of the time, it is not. It really is not. Even the made up stuff, I'm telling you, I just told you, I thought I made something up today and it was already taken. So check that domain. Now, here's another one that I run into sometimes when people are saying, I got this new business and here's the name. They've got this name that is so long. I'm like, what are you going to do with that? Okay, I know people don't really use business cards as much anymore. I mean, I have like the digital business card on my phone, but who wants this long, long, long business name? And when you tell people what the name of your business is, they get tired of writing. It's like, I can't even put all that in my phone. Like, what is that? Why do you think that is a thing? Because it really is not. You do not need a business name that has 5 different words in it. Just don't. Here are the problems with that. When you get ready to get an email account, like, what are you going to do? It's at, and then you've got this long business name. Think about that. When you get your website and you're running up to people saying, oh yeah, check out my website, and you go to give them this thing that's just way too long. Like, just don't do it. Come up with something short. I even think that my website name is too long. And the only reason it's that long is because the website name that I wanted, which was just my last name and law, was already taken. So like I said before, you think you're being original. You might even think your name is original. I'm telling you, it is not. Somebody will have that stuff all the time. And here's something else that people don't think about. They go get these names that have words in them that are derogatory or obscene or offensive, or it's some sort of slur in there. And sometimes they might not even know, especially when it's a slur, especially when it's related to another culture. If you're not a part of that culture, then you might not even know that that is a slur in that culture. And here you are, you're now using it on your website. You've got it in your domain name. It's all on your social media, only for you to find out 6 months into this when somebody says to you, hey, you know that in such and such culture, people really find that word offensive, that it's used to berate people, and it's not a good word to use. Do your homework, and ask around. Find out, whether or not some of these names are really names that you really want to use. Another thing to think about is to just think about what people associate with it. This can really be an issue if you're trying to really brand your company. So if you're really trying to say, hey, we are in the faith atmosphere, and then you come up with this name that actually is associated with something that a person of faith doesn't really want to be associated with. Look at my phone going off already this morning. So check it out. Make sure that you have done your research around these names. So another thing I want to talk about is working with partners. I tell people, because they come to me and they're all excited, they're all aglow, they've got this new business, they've got this new partner that they're going to be working with. And I sort of burst their bubble every single time. I'm like, it's like the honeymoon and you're just getting married and you're thinking all great and wonderful things. We're about to have this wonderful future together. And you never really think about, well, what does it look like when there's a business divorce, when we hate each other, when we don't want to speak to each other anymore? Our customers and clients can pick up on it that something's wrong, something's not working. I actually saw something happen here in the area that I live in And somebody was talking about one of the restaurants, a well-known establishment that had been in business for years. And there were some questions regarding some changes that had taken place and why it was a little different now. And somebody goes, "Oh, well, there was a divorce, right? And this party was the one that got the restaurant." And so people pick up on these things. And so I tell people, when you start working with somebody else, you really have to have your eyes open. You cannot be in this position where you're just going to go in thinking everything is going to be great, everything is going to be solid. Because I've seen it many a times. People come to me when things have gone south and they're just like, how do I get out of this? This other person we want to get rid of. How do we get rid of this other person? This person wants to leave, but they want to take most of the business with them, and yet they didn't even really create most of the business. And so it's that part, like that part becomes the bigger issue. And I tell people to always think with the end in mind. We've heard that said plenty of times, but people don't think about it when they're going into a marriage, when they're going into a business marriage. They think about all of the wonderful things, but don't really have conversations about what does it look like if we decide to break up, if we're no longer together in this business. So how do you make that work? So here are some of the things that I tell people to think about before they ever even get into business with somebody else. Vet that person. Have you checked that person out? Like, have you gone on their social media, on any of their public pages to see what they're actually talking about, to see how they interact with other people? Because how they interact with you might not be how they interact with other people. They might just be giving you something different because they want to engage with you. They want to be in business with you. They want to be associated with you. And so they're bringing you their best look, everything that's good about them. They're giving you the star reel, and that's what you're making a decision on. So I tell people, have you gone to their website if they already have one? Do you know about current customers or clients or other business relationships that they have? What are people saying about them? Like, here's the thing to think about. Go with what you're seeing and go with your gut instinct. I have had so many people come to me and say, well, Sheila, oh, I knew something didn't seem right or something didn't feel right early on. Like, you knew deep down that that person was lying to you. You knew deep down that that person was putting out, that the person was in a certain lifestyle or had certain connections, had a certain network, could bring certain value. And you knew deep down things didn't add up, right? It didn't look right. It didn't sound right. You just had some sort of feeling. And yet you went with it anyway. And what I tell people is listen to your gut instinct. Listen to your instinct, because scientifically, your brain is a computer. Like, you have already experienced this before. It has been imprinted on your brain. And so consciously, you're trying to figure out what's going on. Subconsciously, the computer in your brain already knows what's going on. You're just having trouble trying to fit what you want to see with the reality. And you're trying to find a way to make reality work for you. You're like, okay, I want them to be this kind of person. I want this to be the reality. And it just isn't. It just is not. So I tell people, vet, do your research, ask around, look around, ask questions. And there's usually a lot out there. People put a lot out there. So start with their social media, see who their friends are. And I'm not telling you to stalk people. That's not what I'm saying, because some of you will walk away and be like, well, let me see. I don't want you to do anything illegal. That is not what I'm talking about. Do not start stalking people. Do not say Ms Legalista said on that live that I should be all up DMing them day and night, asking them questions. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that for a lot of people now, we have public profiles that are out there. Take a look at these public profiles. If stuff's not adding up, if the math is not mathing, well, then you have your answer right there. Don't go into business with them. So that's sort of all of the stuff you can see. But there's a little bit more homework that you can do also. You can look at government filings and see what's going on with people too. And sometimes it's like, oh, well, do I need to do a background check? Well, in some instances, you might want to do a background check. Think about how much is on the line for you and how little a background check will cost versus what you have to lose if everything goes south with this partner. If you're walking into a situation where you're putting six figures into a company, and I don't know very many companies that you can start, that you're starting big and planning to scale, where you are putting some money at risk here. So if you're willing to put your livelihood, your money, your reputation on the line, why wouldn't you conduct a background check to know who you're working with? I'm telling you, a lot of times people are not going to tell you the stuff that's going on. I was once in a situation where a client did not, how do I want to say this client did this? The client did not provide their full legal name, did not provide their full legal name, provided a nickname. Let's call it that, provided a nickname. And I knew that the legal name sounded a bit familiar. And it wasn't until later when I realized, oh, now I know, because there had been some legal issues associated with this person. And if you go look up the legal name, if you do enough research, it's not going to be one of those things that's going to pop up. It's not like the Department of Justice was going after them. It was not that kind of thing. Okay. Not some national scam or anything like that. But if you did enough research, you could find out that the person had had some issues. And they were the kind of issues that would probably make you ask yourself whether or not this was a person you really wanted to have a business relationship with. Now, it's one thing when a person has run into legal issues. And let me put this out there. A lot of people have issues, okay? It is easy to get sued. All somebody has to do is go down to the courthouse, file a complaint and summons against you, and all of a sudden you've got a legal issue, right? Like, it doesn't take a whole lot to find yourself, in a position where you're being accused of something. Anybody can accuse you, and then you've then got to go to court and prove that, you didn't do this. I didn't do this. Okay, I'm not that party. It wasn't me. I was someplace else. Wrong person or wrong contract, whatever. Okay, so I'm not putting down anybody who's been in a legal issue. What I'm talking about is a person who tries to hide that there were certain things going on about them that they weren't even willing to give you their correct legal name. And the person continued not to share that. And so you have to sort of watch for these red flags, listen to your gut instinct, and know when to walk away. Now, there are plenty of times I think people say too, well, maybe the person has changed, or, maybe this won't happen to me. Like, you like to think that you won't be the person that this will happen to, that it'll happen to those other people because they didn't, have contracts in place or they didn't do their research. And you're thinking, oh, I know it's not going to happen to me. This person is not going to take me down. I'm telling you, if the person is still sort of hiding from what went on, then you have to ask yourself, what else is that person going to be hiding from you? Okay. People who have been justice involved, who have had to serve time, people who are out front about it, I have less concerns about those people because they're being straight up with you from day one, saying, look, yeah, I messed up. I made some wrong decisions here, but I'm trying to get back on track. Okay. So that's the person that you can say, okay, I see where you're going. I might not be ready to do business with you right now. I want to see what you're doing. I want to build a level of trust with you and watch you get there. And then maybe we can work together in the future. But at least that person you go in with your eyes wide open because that person has been honest with you. It is these other people who try to hide what went on and what's continuing to go on that you have to watch out about. And so a lot of times I tell people, you're so busy trying to get the bag, trying to get the money, that you'll overlook these things because you're in a position where you're in need. And let's just be honest, there are a lot of people struggling, not just people who are in poverty, but people who have jobs who are still struggling, still trying to find a way not to be in this, one check or two check or three checks, three paychecks from their employer. And if they don't get them, then, there's going to be a problem with paying the rent or the mortgage. There's going to be a problem with getting the utilities or the food or the medicine. And so a lot of people are only a few paychecks away from being in a very destitute position. And so in the back of their head is, what can I do to bring more economic stability to my life? I don't want to have to wake up every day wondering, okay, well, am I going to get fired? And look, I'll tell you, I review severance agreements all the time. People are being let go all the time, and they'll get some money. Okay, they'll get some money, but how long is that money going to cover them if they don't have a job and they still have bills coming in? Like, that money is going out as fast as that money is coming in. And so you see this opportunity to build a business with somebody else, to start a side hustle, to look for ways to then scale that. And this person wants to come on board and do it with you. And sometimes maybe even they're bringing money to the table. You need to wonder, where is the money coming from? And here's the other thing to think about, because those sound like all the bad red flags. Okay, so it's like, oh yeah, the red ones we can see, but it's the yellow ones, like the yellow flags, the caution flags, because the red flags are like, stop, don't even go there, do not go there. I'm telling you as an attorney. The yellow flags are the flags where you should exercise some caution and ask more questions. And so it doesn't have to be anything bad. It just has to be something that you have more knowledge about. So for instance, suppose, you're single, you're going to enter into this business relationship with another party, and that party has a spouse. Okay, so what you need to be thinking about is, so what's the agreement? How's this going to work if your business partner passes? What's going to happen to the business partner's portion of the business? Are you now in business with the spouse? Do you have a good relationship with the spouse? Like, what is that going to look like? And so, the yellow caution is not so much about things you need to run away from. Okay, the yellow caution is about, I need to ask a few more questions here. I need to do a little bit more research here. What is going on? And then you decide whether or not you still want to work with that person. And if so, you make sure you have some concrete agreements in place that say what the outcome is going to be. Because maybe it's, hey, if a partner passes, then the agreement is that the other partner has an automatic right to buy out that person's estate, so that you aren't in the business now with the partner's spouse and the children and the whoever else that might have some sort of interest in there, because that partner put something in a will that you didn't know about how that partner's business shares were going to be divided. And so it's something to think about when you say, I'm going to go into business with somebody else, or I'm going to take money from somebody else and possibly give up ownership to a silent partner. Let me tell you, these silent partners are never silent because it's their money on the line. And so even when they aren't saying anything, they're saying things, okay? If it's a restaurant, they're coming by because they want to see how the restaurant's doing. Even if they aren't coming by in person, they're checking it out online. They're possibly driving by and seeing, are people going in there, what the menu is, what's it look like, what kind of reviews is getting on Yelp, because it's their money at stake. And so they always have a vested interest to make sure that you're doing what you've said you're going to be doing. So even this quiet money sometimes isn't so quiet. And sometimes what I've seen is those silent investors become very vocal about how they think the business ought to be run. And so you think you have this contract in place, this agreement that says they're just going to be silent. They just are loaning this amount of money to the business, and they're just going to get this payment with interest every month. And that's what the deal is. But before you know it, that silent partner is now taking you to court because they don't feel like you're running the restaurant or business like you should. And as a result, they maybe aren't getting the loan and the returns or royalty or interest or whatever. And so they're saying, hey, I'm going to take you to court now. So there are a lot of things, again, that you have to watch out for when you start saying, okay, I'm going to bring somebody else on. What is this going to look like? How are we going to make decisions? Especially if it's two people. You got two people. To me, those are the hardest ones to work with, because two people, it's like, okay, so they'll come to me and they'll say, well, it's a 50-50 ownership. I'm like, great. So how are you guys making decisions? Because if you say yes and you say no, it sounds to me like you're at a stalemate. So who's the decision maker here? And what happens if, when you're the decision maker, you make the decision, and the other party, because the other party doesn't like the decision, now undermines you or doesn't do the things the other party is supposed to do. I'm telling you, these things always sound really good when people start. It is the honeymoon. Everything is perfect for a while until it's not. And then people are just like, I don't know what to do because this person's not doing right. I have seen it so many times. So how do you decide who's going to be the primary decision maker? How do you decide how you're going to shut the business down? Like, suppose things are not going well. Like, who makes that determination? Suppose one of the parties saying, no, I think we should keep it going. We should keep it going. And the other party saying, I've had enough. I'm done. I want out. Is there some language in there that says, yeah, you can go, I'm going to stay, I'm going to buy you out? And so now how do you determine how much that buyout is? Like, all of that should be in the agreement in terms of determining what the market value is. If there even is a market value, suppose the business has been doing so bad, so poorly that, there is no market value. There's only liabilities. Like, you owe everybody in the world because it was a restaurant and you had furniture and you still owe the vendors, you still owe on the lease. How about that? All right. So how do you divide those things up? Then here's another thing, and this has even come up sort of in the entertainment world. And I had this happen with a client too. Like, who owns not the business furniture and that sort of stuff? Who gets to walk away with the intellectual property, with the name? Because remember, I talked earlier, if you just come on, I talked earlier about registering a trademark. If you have a name, a product, a service mark, if you're providing services, registering that with the US Patent and Trademark Office. So who gets to walk away with that? Suppose you say, okay, there aren't any assets, there aren't any liabilities, we're shutting everything down, but now there's this domain, there are the social media accounts that actually have followers, and there's this registration that's out there. So who gets to walk away with that? The parties could just say, you know what, let's just sell it and see who wants to buy it. And maybe somebody else finds some value in it and they can take it and do something else with it. But what if one of the people who owns the business says, hey, well, I want it, and the other person says, well, now you got to pay me what we think the fair market value is. But there can be value in the intellectual property that people never even think about or consider. This sort of idea that you've got an Instagram account. Think about it, because you don't even necessarily have to be running, and I keep using a restaurant as a business, okay? I keep using a restaurant as a business. You don't even have to be running the restaurant anymore. But suppose you had an Instagram account that had 5,000 followers, and one of the business owners now says, you know what, I want the Instagram account. I'm going to start posting recipes up there, because this person's already got 1,000 followers. So there's some value in that. They go, I'm going to start posting recipes up there. I'm going to have a recipe book that I'm going to sell through that. I'm now going to be doing live courses so that people can see that. I'm going to have affiliate links so that people can buy cooking products. I'm going to possibly grow this to 50,000 so that I can do my own licensing agreements with companies that sell cooking related products. And so there's some value there in intellectual property that has already built an audience around it. Some of these social media accounts. And so people don't think about that. They just walk away from it. And there's never any decision about some of these accounts, who gets to own them, what the value is. Can we sell them? Can we keep them? Can we continue working together with just those? And maybe it's the bricks and mortar business that's shut down. So there are a lot of ways to think about how you can take a business that's folding and sort of pivot into just using it differently. But again, the thing comes down to whether or not the partners can still work together. Because, like I said, if they're hating each other at this point, it's like a marriage, a marriage that has gone bad, and one party saying, "I don't want that person to have anything. I don't want that person I want that person to fall apart, to never succeed in anything." You know how some people are that way, unfortunately. They only want to see the downfall of the other person. And if you're in that business with somebody who's like that, then you're going to run into problems if you did not have an agreement up front that says what you're going to do when you dissolve this LLC and the members want to go their separate ways. Who gets what? Who gets what back? Because maybe you had somebody who put more into the business than the other party did. Like, who gets what back? What does dissolution look like? And then what happens with all of this intellectual property that's out there? Because I'm telling you, there are ways to take intellectual property that you already have and continue to build on it and then make money off of that. So, these are the conversations, I'm telling you, that a lot of times people do not have until it's too late. Until it's too late. They wait until the parties aren't speaking to each other. They're waiting until things have fallen apart with vendors, because at that point, vendors are saying, "Hey, you're not responding. You're not doing right." People are saying on the reviews on Yelp and on their websites, they're making comments and leaving comments on their Facebook page. "Hey, they don't respond anymore. Hey, they aren't delivering on time anymore. Hey, they don't even answer the phone anymore." Had that happen with a company, and it was sort of like, they don't even answer the phone anymore. How am I supposed to get up with them to get my merchandise? And so if you're one of the business owners with that, you're now associated with all of that negativity. That's why a lot of times you see when businesses go down or get sold or something, the first thing that the new people will put out there is, "Hey, under new management," because a lot of times they recognize the value in the name. Even when things have gone bad with the name, they recognize that there's a social media account and following with that same name that they can take, turn around the image, build it back up instead of starting from scratch. Sometimes it's easier to just take what you have and make it better. Now, sometimes you got to throw that stuff away, especially if there are legal issues associated with it. If there have been lawsuits, if people are still, in court, if there's a lot of stuff still to be worked out, then you throw that name away, buy everything else, take on the lease, take on the merchandise, but change the name, be a totally new entity. But if it's something that, has basically gone downhill because of the business partners and the business divorce, but you can walk in and you can see ways to turn that around and build on what's already there, then that might be the better way to go. Because like I said, with social media accounts, a lot of times, if you've already got an audience, if you've already got a following, then you have people who are already interested in what you're doing. And so the key is in saying, "Hey, what are we going to do to continue to build this?" And maybe we don't have the restaurant anymore, but maybe we do all of those other things that I mentioned before. And that's with any business. Like, that's with any business. You're going to take a look at it, see what's working, and you're going to build that up. And for the things that don't work, you're going to get rid of that. And for the people who don't work, you're going to get rid of them. And then you're going to put a bunch of contracts in place that can maybe save you from some issues next time around. And so here's what I tell people too when I'm having these conversations about contracts, because I have to keep it real with people, because people come to me because they've been traumatized because of some business thing that went on before. And they're just like, "Sheila, I need you to save me. I need you to save me. I need you to put a contract in place because I never want this to happen again." And we're sitting at the table and I'm telling them, "Okay, so we can put this in the contract. We will make sure that there are more protections for you, so that when this happens again, we know how this is going to work out." But here's the thing, you can never think of everything. You can never cover every single circumstance. So you might catch this time, but you might miss something else, because Who would have thought that we would have been in a pandemic? Worldwide pandemic, cities shutting down, students having to set up desks at home, parents becoming at-home teachers, people trying to nurse relatives. Nobody ever would have thought that that would have happened, and yet it did. And so, how many people were prepared for that? Not very many. Not very many people that I know were prepared for a worldwide pandemic. So when you're thinking about, a contract that you're going to put in place, what I tell people is what we're trying to do is to minimize the number of things that we are not prepared for. Okay, so we're going to cover as many topics as we can. How do we do that? Well, we start asking, what kind of issues have you been having in the past? And then we think about, well, what kind of new things are you trying to do? Where is it that you want to go? Who is it that you're going to be working with? How are you going to be paying people? How are you going to be showing up? What are you expecting to use? The more questions you ask, then you can start to get those answers, and you can go back and look at the contract, the 2 of you, 3 of you, 4 of you, look at the contract and say, okay, is this in here? Yes, this is covered under paragraph 6, A, B, and C, and then little 1, 2, and 3 under D. And then you can go through that and you've covered as much as you can. But there are always, always, always going to be issues that pop up that you just didn't expect, that you couldn't account for. And so you take those into account, okay? And you handle those as best you can when they come up. But all that other stuff, there's no reason for you to keep reliving the same business trauma again and again when you can put a contract in place that talks about and covers some of these issues, that says what the consequences are going to be, what the parties have agreed to. Like there's no issue, there's no reason for you to keep going through the same mistakes. Like if you are going through the same business mistakes again and again and again, then you are not paying attention. You're not learning your lessons. I don't know what you're doing. I don't know what you're doing. It might be time for a different career. But if you find that you're going through some things, some of the best things that you can do is after that is over with, figure out where things went wrong. Like that's the focus, not where things went right yet. Figure out where things went so wrong and say, okay, here's how that's never going to happen again. Okay. So you want to double down on things that are working, and then these things that aren't, they either got to go or you got to put some better policies in place. You got to do things differently. You can't keep doing them the same way. So when I talk about making contracts, they are never like the panacea. They are never going to be your cure-all. They are never going to cover every single thing that you can ever come up with. That is never, ever going to be the case. Okay. You will cover as much as you can, as well as you can, as best you can, when you work to make sure you put that in place. And that means, like I said, you have to look at the strengths of your business and the weaknesses. What are the weaknesses of your business model? And not just the business model, it's the other people that you're working with, But let me tell you, when you bring these people on, because I've had people come to me and talk about how they wanted to build a business and where they were going to get funding from. Now, a lot of people are just like, well, I've heard you can get grant money for new businesses, and maybe there's some out there. Okay, there is money out there, but there's a way to get to that money. And I do think that there are now a few more opportunities for people who are trying to start businesses. But in most cases, you've got angel investors for technology companies, for biotech companies. There are certain industries where you're going to be able to get funding. People in the entertainment industry, if you've built a certain kind of network, there are people you can tap into. But a lot of times people are starting a shoestring business. They're using their savings and their credit cards. They're working on the side and self-funding. That's what a lot of people are doing. And every once in a while, I have somebody pop up that says something like, well, I know I can get some money from some other people, but it's questionable money. I'm just like, why would you even consider that? Why would you even consider that? I had a person one time who was really deep into this. Like this person was really going to be funded through, I don't know, some other parties. And there were two things that I did. And one was, the first thing I said was, well, if you're going to go that route, then I'm not going to be your attorney, because I'm not even going to be associated with you doing anything like that. Nothing, not even going to be near it. I don't want to hear any more about it. Number two, the second thing I did was I said, well, let me give you a breakdown here. I'm not a criminal law attorney. I don't really practice criminal law, but you all still sort of know things. I sort of hang out in that sphere a little bit. So I said, well, let me sort of pull up for you what our sentencing guidelines are for some of the things that I'm thinking that you might be engaged in and be possibly charged with if you go that route. It's like, okay, conspiracy sounds like it might be a problem for you. Fraud sounds like it might be something for you. We've got wire fraud might be an issue here. Yeah, let's see, money laundering. Did I mention that? And I'm just sort of going down the list here based on what this person has shared with me. I'm like, you'd be better off self-funding, because at least you aren't associating a possible jail term or sentence with starting your business. So people need to be really careful about that. And so when you start saying you're going to work with somebody else, do you really know where their money's coming from? Like, do they have a job? Do they have a spouse with a good job? Do they have savings that a parent gave them, or savings that they've been building over time? Like, do you know what that person is bringing to the table and how that person got it? And sometimes people don't ask enough questions. They see people that look like legitimate business owners and then find out later that there was a whole subculture associated with this person that they didn't know about. I can tell you time and time again, I have been around people, and people will lift people up and say, oh, this is a great person. This person is great for doing A, B, and C. And then you only find out 6 months later that the person has been in all of this trouble. And nobody told you. Everybody said, oh, no, this person's great. This person's wonderful. And yet people knew and didn't say anything to you. So you have to go into these business relationships with your eyes wide open, because then the thing becomes, you're so like in like this with your new business partner that you're now trying to figure out, well, how do I get out of this? How do I get out of this? So that's what's sort of going on with this. I see we have Google Life been hanging around for a while. And we're in at like 42 minutes. I feel like I've been talking a lot. My hot chocolate is out, it's gone. And I think those are really the three things that I wanted to hit on in this. Oh, and there was something I left out when I was talking about when I was talking about the name for the business. And I mentioned doing the trademark search, searching at the federal level, searching at the state level, looking at Google, looking at the domain, checking out the social media, but I forgot to mention professional licenses. And so there are certain words that, unless you have a professional license associated with that particular industry or profession, you can't use them. So you have to be careful about saying the bank of something something as your business, because in your state, a bank is typically going to be a regulated industry. And so by using the word bank, you may be putting out into the public sphere that you are a financial institution and not the bank of emotions and you're selling counseling services. And so you really have to check into what professional licenses require, and then what might be required by some of these regulatory agencies that say, hey, you have to use this in your title, and you can't use this unless you actually have a license in that, or you have been registered by that regulatory agency to use it. So that's this other thing that sort of pops up sometimes. But those are some of the things to think about when you're starting a business and you're thinking about working with other people, these sort of red flags to keep in mind so that you don't have this big blow up at the end, this business divorce, this, I don't know. after the honeymoon is over. But that's it. First live. I'm going to be doing a lot more lives during December because I know that people are sort of wrapping up the year, like I said at the beginning, and looking at, hey, what went wrong? What do I want to do different? What do I need to build up for 2024? So we're getting ready for 2024. I'm also going to be talking a little bit more about business scams during the holidays because I think people need to be aware and mindful because you have your money and now you're going to be going online. You're going to be making purchases. You're going to be buying from people that you don't know sometimes. And you're going to sometimes be getting information from other people who say, hey, here's a product that you purchased, you need to renew, only to find out, yeah, that wasn't really a product that you ever purchased anyway. So we're going to be talking a little bit more about scams and how to keep yourself safe during the holiday season. All right, so don't forget to give the video a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you don't miss a thing. Mwah. Peace.